So, after a slew of recent closures, including Austin Reed and BHS, how does a high street fashion brand turn around its fortune? Well, Tara Hounsley is a senior reporter for Drapers magazine. Kate Hardcastle is from retail consultancy Insight with Passion. Tara, first of all, strong views from people there in Manchester city centre. What is the situation at French Connection and how worried should we be for the brand?
Well, we should be quite worried because shares have been much lower now than they were, say, in 2007 when they were 248p a share. Now they're about 40p today. So, that kind of shows the movement of the brand. It lost 3.5 million in the last results, which, as you said earlier, was the fourth straight year of losses. So, this really is sort of an investor raising a flag. They've been through a turnaround plan before, and obviously they're in this state. And
what did the investor, Gatemore Capital, what did they actually suggest they do?
Well, they had a number of points. One was basically improving the design. Another was sort of around managing the stock levels properly, because one thing is that you do often find that it is heavily discounted. And they also pointed to problems with the size of the range that it's got compared to sort of rivals like Ted Baker, for example, or Reiss.
Let me bring in Kate Hardcastle. We heard what the people of Manchester thought. How near the button are they, and where do you think they've gone wrong?
I think the consumers in Manchester, one particularly summed it up that the only favourable comment was they had very similar pieces each year. I think they've done a very succinct and brilliant job of explaining what's happened at French Connection. French Connection are not alone in this situation. It's the upper middle market that are really struggling. And I think if you look at what they did well in the past, they started off as a cheesecloth success story in the 70s. You can imagine people going out and getting their terracotta pots from Habitat, who've also disappeared off the high street, and getting their cheesecloth shirts. They had this kind of cheeky campaign in the 2000s with the take-off of the almost Wonder Bra campaign success, something that got consumers back. But today they stand in a retail place where 20% of people are buying online. There has been an outpouring of online brands like ASOS doing brilliantly, and those on the high street who are trying to survive like Zara are bringing in great products at great price in a very quick turnaround period.
I mentioned Stephen Marks as the man who started the whole thing, and he's a very strong presence. It's a bit of maybe a one-man band. Can that one man be part of the problem?
I think that's certainly the suggestion. I don't think age is a number that we can put against us, because we can say, well, this person's far too old to understand online trading. But the pace, the retail of now is certainly not one where we might have the experiences of 20 years ago to bring relevance to that. And if you look what he's doing, he's trying to surround himself with new people, with people from these successful brands. But very much, you can't do what you've always done in a new retail brand that's trying to supply fashion. You've got to respond to the consumer, and I think almost have taken a bit of a Marks and Spencer's arrogant stand in that it's, this is who we are, this is what we do, and it's very much about incorporating the customer going forward into what you need to look like for fashion.
Tara Hounsley, French Connection say they've got a strategic plan to improve performance. Do we know what that is?
Well, they're closing another slew of stores, which I think is probably a good thing. Retailers all over the country are sort of tightening up store portfolios, realising with multi-channel that you don't need that, that level of stores anymore. So there's 13 closed in the last year. There's another 3 or 4 planned for this year. They've also brought in a former Next director, Christos Angelidis. So he is really well respected in the trade. He was at Next for 28 years. He's just been over to Abercrombie and Fitch in the US. Right. And so he has joined as a director. So that kind of is a mark in the sand, because everyone wanted to know where he would be going next. But we're yet to see probably some of his sort of expertise
brighter
filtered down.
Ideas. Yeah. Kate, just finally, you're asked by retailers to tell them what consumers want. What would you tell French Connection?
The most important thing they've got to do is reconnect and find a place for themselves, understanding the market's changed and that may be a very much smaller part of the fashion pie. Consumers will direct you, but you have to engage and listen to them. On their social media, even in a week, they've been very short of doing that, where a competitor brand like ASOS would be constantly in contact, reaching out to that customer.
OK, Kate Hardcastle and Tara Hounsley, thank you both very much. We did make contact with French Connection. We invited them onto the programme, but they declined our invitation. They've yet to issue a comment to us.